Hello everyone. This is the second day of our monthly study intensive, and then this is the inauguration month of a study series on Avatamsaka Sutra, Kengon-kyo. And then today I'm going to give two lectures again, just like yesterday. And then I just wanted to start with a little conversation we had after the lectures. So yesterday, I was speaking about the part of the introduction, how this immense volume of sutra ended up becoming one sutra rather succinctly. But if I have to go into more detailed explanation, it's much more complicated process. But without getting into this, I think what's really interesting about the process of this Avatamsaka Sutra becoming as one large sutra, as I mentioned, it used to be, segment by segment. It was individual writings here and there. And then it was made in India, and for some reason or another, it traveled to Silk Road area, Kingdom of Khotan, and then it gets kind of re-edited and become one sutra. And then it will be brought over to China, and then immediately it was brought over to all over Asian countries. And it's quite international impact they really made. So I think this is very interesting. Yesterday, hinting the portion of this internationalness, so to speak, of this sutra, I actually started the whole conversation with our international foreign travels, and particularly traveling to those, traditionally regarded as Buddhist nations in Asian countries. So we have this really fond memory. For instance, Catherine and Michelle have traveled with me to Todaichi, the most important portion of the yesterday's conversation. And we're really going into this mode of this international travel. But it is really true that studying this Avatamsaka Sutra, you really have this international flavor. Oh, by the way, on our website, we have a specific page about our practice and study in Japan. And then you may be able to read some essays from previous traveling we did together. But anyway, for instance, in the original Sanskrit text, supposedly original text, some fragments of the original writings are still existing and has been discovered, even though the entire portion of Avatamsaka Sutra, we really don't have the original Sanskrit anymore. But according to the fragments we know, we do see some word which doesn't really exist in Sanskrit. You know what I'm talking about. For instance, in Japanese language, we don't really have syllables like squirrel, because we don't have the sound like R and L. So there's no syllable to combine R and L. So you can immediately tell, for instance, if you see in some writing, if there was some kind of syllables that doesn't exist in such and such language, then you see, oh, it was kind of added or rewritten or edited somebody else who has this syllable, right? So in the same manner, in the so-called original Sanskrit portion, you see syllables that's not Sanskrit, and which is actually Khotan's language. So you really see this is a really collaboration, international collaboration, creating this sutra. And also, I was mentioning the last portion of Kegon-kyo is very important, and which used to be, one individual Sutra, and it is translated as entering into Dharma realm, right? In this particular translation. That one, Buddhist Academia is basically talking about, it was probably written by someone who is very close to the community of Dravidians. Dravidians are indigenous Indian people who had lived in the southern portion, basically entire portion of the subcontinent of India, before Aryans started to move in from the northern portion of India into middle portion to southern portion of India. So they are different races and different ethnicities and different language they speak. And then currently in India, these descendants of Dravidians are mainly living in the southern portion of India. But an interesting portion is shortly before and after century, like BC first and AD first and second, the southern portion was the very, very lucrative, busy hub of traders who utilizes the ocean route, both west side and east side of southern subcontinent of India, particularly western side. And then that's probably why many of these Buddhist sutras traveled through oceanic way to northern India and went into Silk Road, because those people who were very actively using the ships along this ocean way were traders, merchants. So therefore, it really shows some elements of those Dravidian merchants in this writing. And then particularly in last chapter, in this version, it's chapter 39, this, I was talking about the seeker is traveling through 53 different bodhisattvas. And in this explanation of this seeker, there's always an epithet as he is the son of Choja. Choja is a Sino-Japanese word for someone wealthy, but very often it is a merchant. So it is also quite interesting. Ever since the origin of Avatamsaka Sutra, there's an element of traveling and this sense of international flavor. So after all of that years and all of those international group of people's, effort, this sutra, Kengonkyo, was delivered to China and then to all of us, now crossing Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, to America and to Europe. So it really gives me this strong sense of almost like responsibility. This is the type of the teaching which was made and delivered by millions of people's effort of 2,000 years. So therefore, it would be such a shame if in our generation, if we destroy this. So it is really, really important for us, knowing very well as widening our, broader view of the world, both time and space. It is very important for us to really understand and clarify the most important elements of this teaching, and then maintain it, and then deliver to the next place and next generation as well. So this sense of international travel, sense of international flavor, actually creates more sense of almost like a bodhicitta, don't you think? And that's exactly how I felt. Now, today is the second day, and what I like to do is I like to complete the introduction portion. And the first portion I really like to talk about is, so how exactly, it's an overview of how exactly Avatamsaka Sutra explains what Buddhist text explains, which is Buddhadharma and Buddha Way. So what is the characteristic way of teaching Buddha Way and Buddhadharma in the lingo of Avatamsaka Sutra? And as I mentioned yesterday, I do understand many of the viewers will not be able to keep joining us for month after month after month, and many of you probably have to give up at the point of introduction. So in that case, if you do listen to the next two segment of this introduction, I'm going to try to give you almost like a guideline or hints to keep reading on Avatamsaka Sutra on your own without relying on this lecture series. So in that way, I like to try to summarize this overview in the next two lectures. It's a kind of hefty task, so I hope it will work. So I segmented into the next two lectures in this way. So as I always say, all of the authentic Buddhist texts talks about only one thing, which is how this is, what this is, and in that, how we function. And then first portion is what it is. So that's Buddha, Buddhadharma. And then in Buddha, explanation in Buddha by Avatamsaka Way, there are several elements. So I'm going to explain those elements one by one. And most possibly that takes up the first session. And then in the next session, I will explain how Buddha Way, Butsudo is explained characteristically in Avatamsaka Sutra. For those of you who don't have a patience, I'm just going to give you one line. And then the one line is, in Buddha, Avatamsaka Sutra really depicts this world in a huge, immense scale. And this depiction is, of course, interdependent origination. And for this interdependent origination, they utilizes very intricate, extensive, huge, immeasurable examples of how one connects into all others. So it is really about incredibly creative but incredibly vast explanation of connection. And then by doing so, they also depict this world of, as a matter of fact, even though we feel this matter and this matter does not really share anything. For instance, if I am here, if you are here, we cannot really share the same space. This space is occupied by me, this space is occupied by you. But from Dharma point of view, it's actually completely merged. And then Avatamsaka school eventually created an incredibly clear and also immense structure of the teaching. And in that teaching, they usually use the word muge, no obstacle. So I'm going to explain that. And then out of that, there will be a characteristic way of explaining this way by one is all is one theory. Not theory, one way of expression. And then this one is all is one is not only about the space, but it is also about the time. So in other words, the beginning of ending and this little tiny microsecond moment is actually includes entire kalpa. That type of expression is typical. And then you probably have heard some of those expressions from many other places, but it all originates from Avatamsaka Sutra's characteristic way of explanation. And then another portion is, this is about this interrelated origination. And when this interrelated origination, the world is created. But when your world is created, you really have to be careful. This world is created because of your mind. So the whole manifestation of this world actually is a manifestation of your mind. So again, you might have heard about this, but Avatamsaka Sutra kind of lays the ground of latter centuries birth of Yogacara teaching. Of course, you really cannot connect directly and say this is the origin, but this has been like a beginning of the teaching. The type of the teaching eventually will be structured as a Yogacara teaching. So those are the typical way of what they call. And then it's really related with the Butsudo. Butsudo. Of course, it's not really two separate things, but it's one thing. But out of this depiction, out of this expression, you will start to see, so this is the world of non-separation, non-dichotomy. So in another word, it is the world of one out of all me is also all out of all me. So in other words, it's an expansion of your broader way of viewing the world. And so it shifts internally how you deal with the world. So of course it will become, I do things for me, instead it becomes I do things for the others, and it is pushed to I do things for the others, that is also doing others is for others is doing for me as well. So it's the merge again. So in another word, this is the Bodhisattva way. So this whole text is very interesting, utilizing the main speaker as a Dhammakaya's symbolic way of talking about Vairochana. But this Vairochana does not speak in this sutra, and then let other people to speak. But most of the time, the main speaker is Samantabhadra. Samantabhadra is the symbolic way of talking about our own function, our own actual practice, physical, mental practice, the deeds and action itself. So therefore, from Avatamsaka school, Kengon school structure point of view, they use the word Tai, So, You. Tai is body, You is So is characteristics. So in another word, it's in sync with emptiness and form. But in Prajnaparamita Sutra, which was composed a couple of centuries before Avatamsaka Sutra's birth, it stops there. But then Avatamsaka Sutra really focuses on the function portion. So instead of depicting this whole world as form and emptiness, it depicts together with you. You is function. So this is form and emptiness, and the function is creating this trajectory of this true reality. So that's a really typical way of explaining Buddhadharma and the Buddha Way in Kengon Kyo. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get into each one of them into a little more in detail and try to link it with Dogen's teaching. So if you'd like to continue to participate in this lecture, please do so. Okay. So I just gave you the guideline of rather complicated storyline that I'm going to go through. So the first portion is this Buppo, Buddhadharma, how Avatamsaka Sutra, Kengon Kyo is going to explain. So I mentioned they usually utilizes the word, each era, each place, and each sutra tries to depict what it is, in another word, Buppo, in some more relatable word. And so in Kengon Kyo, they tend to use the word Hokkai. Hokkai is Dharma world. So this is depicted as under the name of Dharma world. And this Dharma world is created and constantly being created, constantly changing because of interdependent origination. And that's how it is described. And then in this depiction, you will notice the characteristic of this muge. Muge is no obstacle. So therefore, I'm going to introduce this first set of teaching. Let's see. Kengon school later on created and started to teach. This is almost like a guideline to really clearly and deeply understand Avatamsaka Sutra. So I'm going to use the notes on the shared screen instead of Relay's board. Let's see, this is yesterday's. So this is Muge. I'm going to make it a little larger. Mu is no, it's a negation. Ge is obstacle, so it doesn't obstacle. So that's the word. This word and this way of describing true reality, describing the teaching, eventually became such a huge influence on Zen school. So you probably have heard this word, particularly this ge, obstacle, and also muge as a compound, very often, as many of the viewers come from a background of Zen teachings. So what are they? So this is pronounced as jiji hokkai, ri hokkai, riji muge hokkai, jiji muge hokkai. Now, the first of all, this ji is matter. So in another word, it is in sync with equivalent to Prajnaparamita Sutra's shiki, form. So this ri is a principle. So in another word, in Prajnaparamita equivalent, it is emptiness. So as we have actually discussed it yesterday, this world can be viewed from one out of all me who are not particularly clear, particularly have not met any kind of teaching, and have lived as a separate human being in this secular world. And we are looking at this world as me, looking at everything outside of me. Yes? But at the same time, this is one aspect of true reality, because we are human beings and we cannot really see from the emptiness side. Because we really don't have this vast, all-inclusive eye. We have this eye, and then we have this, less than 6 feet little body. So we can always crack into the true reality in this way. In another word, this is the depiction of out of a 5 eyes system, it's a human eye. And it is also a part of the true reality. And now, Rihokkai is basically something like out of 5 eye system, it's a heavenly eye, maybe. You can imagine your eye left your body and then floating in the air and on the top of the Everest and looking around the whole world. Or you are in some kind of astronaut and you're flying around the Earth and you actually start to take a look at the Earth and you realized, oh, this is how Earth looks like. So in another word, this is an eye from the emptiness, so to speak. And then from the eye of emptiness side, nothing actually does exist statistically. And as it's constantly changing, so therefore, in the end, there's nothing static is existing, constantly changing. So therefore, this is really world of emptiness, which we really cannot see it clearly that way, only with the support of the teachings or sometimes some kind of science, etc., etc. We can kind of crack into a little bit of that world. So this is Jihokkai. By the way, you probably already know this, but Ho is Dharma, Kai is the world. So this is a Dharma world. Dharma world is the typical way of depicting what it isness in Avatamsaka Sutra. So Jihokkai and also Rihokkai is a 2 different way of looking at the one reality, true reality. And then next portion is saying D and G are actually non-obstacle. So it is not that there's a D there and there's a G there. It is not like there's an emptiness over there, while me as a rupa form, shiki, is here. It is not like that. D and G are not obstacle, meaning completely interpenetrated and interrelated constantly, permanently, always. So that is the actual Dharma world. So this is yet another depiction of a true reality. And if you really understand how true reality is, it's actually D and G are not obstacling each other. So in another word, this is the in sync with the Prajna Paramita's expression, Shiki soku ze ku, ku soku ze shiki. For those of you who don't really have a background of studying or reading Okumura Roshi's explanation of Shiki soku ze ku, ku soku ze shiki, or studying Heart Sutra or Prajna Paramita Sutra, in Dogen's school, sorry, I'm going to take this down so that I can see the viewers. Dogen loves this depiction of explanation of this by utilizing spring and flower. On our website, on the home page, on the first page, when you go there, I usually like to state what we are in a very succinctly in just one line. So I use the word, made the organization name as New York Zen Community for Dogen Study, because this is the Zen community who committed to Shikantaza Zen and then committed to Dogen Study. And then we are based in New York. So it's just succinctly what it is. And then, some people often tells me, why do you constantly change the, front picture? It is because we are constantly changing. And also, it is really with the depiction of Shiki soku ze ku, ku soku ze shiki, based on one of the most famous Dogen's teaching in waka form. On the front page, I placed it in original Japanese and also English translation by Okumura Roshi. But he says, simply says, spring, flower, summer, cuckoos, the bird's voice, singing voice, and then autumn, the moon, and then winter, it's snow. What exactly does it mean? And plus, this waka is titled as Honrai no Menmoku. Honrai no Menmoku is original face is usually translation in English. This English translation is very misleading. Honrai is original. So original meaning principle. Menmoku is literally face and eye. So in another word, Honrai is emptiness, and then Menmoku is rupa, form. And so, for instance, why does it say spring, flower? In another word, spring is a word. It's a concept. And it's a concept and word that tries to depict the conditions. It is a condition of, temperature, weather, moisture, etc., etc. And we call that as a spring. But spring is invisible, and we can't really grasp it. We can't really conceive it, so to speak, because it's just what it is a depiction of a condition. But out of this unseen, unconceivable condition, something starts to arise from the soil, and then eventually out of the soil, the little bud starts to lift up, and then eventually it becomes a stem, and it becomes a little bit of leaves, and then starts to grow the bud and opens into the flower. And this flower is almost like coming out of nothing. Before this flower actually started to, arise, what it was is just an empty space and then soil behind. And then because of the condition of the temperature, moisture, water, etc., or some kind of energetic level that I had in the soil, etc., something starts to form into something visible, smellable, tasteable sometimes. And that is form, that is shiki. And then eventually it will overripe and it may create fruit, but then petal goes on. Fruit may just fall apart. Everything may be rotten and goes back into the soil. And then space becomes just a space again. Soil becomes just a soil with all of those elements and energy. That's how this whole life and this whole world is actually made. So this is, in another word, menmoku portion, eye and face is the flower. Honrai portion is this emptiness. So emptiness is form and emptiness. In another word, you cannot really grasp the emptiness. But at the same time, out of the emptiness, you really see something you can grasp, like a form or rupa. And those are two elements of one true reality. That's what they are talking about. So I go back to share the screen again. That's how Prajnaparamita Sutras are explaining. And in that, this portion in Kegon school actually explains as Ri Ji Muge Hokkai. Don't you think this is so clever? Ri and Ji, emptiness and form, are not obstacling each other. Very often when we start to study Buddhism and when we start to be involved with the morning service and when we start to recite form is emptiness, emptiness is form, we have this strange sense that there's something called form, there's something called emptiness is there. But if you really start to listen to this recitation more carefully, they are not saying form is emptiness. They are saying form is emptiness is form. So form is emptiness, emptiness is form. It's actually one line. And particularly in original Sino-Japanese, what we are really reciting in English is a Sino-Japanese translation into English. Particularly in this Sino-Japanese description, it's not connected with is. It's connected with sokuze. Sokuze basically meaning it's a complete alignment. Soku is immediacy. Ze is exactly it is. So in another word, sokuze or soku and ze, each one of them, but it is emphasized by combining two sokude, gives us immediacy. In another word, it's not the two separate things. It's just completely aligned thing. But at the same time, it is not one thing. Spring is a spring, but each one of those flowers are appearing as each one of them. But at the same time, all of them are, in another word, 100% supported by spring, this whole interrelated conditions. So this is a very interesting thing, So in another word, emptiness is not bothering flowers. Flower is not bothering emptiness. Instead, it's a complete interpenetration, so to speak. Now, speaking of this, Avatamsaka school pushes it even a little further. And then last line, it's really interesting. It's usually always 4 lines, aren't they, for this teaching? And then 4 lines are Jiji, Muge, Hokkai. Now, Ji, as I mentioned, it's form, rupa, matter, object, right? And then object and object are not obstacling each other. But this is a very interesting concept because, for instance, let's say, do I have a coffee cup? Oh, yes, this is good. So I'm going to take this time to show you something, and then I can see audience as well. For instance, in the our so-called reality as a human being, in a very limited senses of human being, two objects in the same place really does not merge. For instance, here, I have a cup of water, and I also have a coffee mug full of coffee. It's kind of just sidestepping a little bit, but when I was a young man, I always wondered why are all these old people always coughing and clearing throat. Now I'm hitting 70 years old, and now I know why. With the aging, my throat always dries up, and sometimes my voice doesn't come up. So I usually have both coffee mug and also cup here. So for instance, in this particular space, right, if I place coffee mug takes up this space. And then I cannot place this water cup into the same space. It's not possible in our, human reality, so to speak. But what this teaching is talking about, as a matter of fact, these two are not obstacling each other. It's actually completely merging and completely penetrating. So, in another word, what we are talking about is, for instance, beyond out of this very narrow limitation human being has, if you really take a look at the thing from much wider, larger aspect, like from Buddhadharma, as a matter of fact, it's a little different. For instance, a coffee mug, if I put this into coffee, I cannot place anything else into it. Yes? But at the same time, this coffee mug was given to me from one of the hospice residents who died at the really early age of early 30s. So therefore, this is such a memorable coffee mug for me. About 15 years ago, I was given, so I've been using this every day for the last 15 years. So what happens is, no matter how I try to clean it, eventually the inside of the coffee mug starts to appear slightly dark. So in another word, if you utilize this like very strong, micro lens, you probably will see eventually elements of the coffee somehow merged into the elements of this ceramic cup. And then probably, and also another portion is, I remember this color was much more clearer when I was receiving. But I also use a dishwasher to clean it every day. And the dishwasher tends to take the elements of the color off. So therefore, this was also merged with elements of the dishwasher's soap, and then elements of something coming in and something is taking off. So in another word, it's constantly changing and merging with the other elements as well. So this is really interesting if you think about that. And also, for instance, when we meet somebody, let's say I'm sitting in front of lots of books, so I'm going to utilize this as a sample, okay? So if I carry, for instance, this book, and then if someone comes up, and then someone is coming up with this book in their hand. So this book and this book are different. So therefore, they are two separate things. So how are we merging? How are we completely penetrating? It's really strange if it's just viewed from a regular human limited perspective. But then when you really think about that, This is something Titanadhan usually does all the time, doesn't it? For instance, both of them may come from, let's say, same publisher. If that's the case, it comes from the same printing company, right? So it comes from the same storage of the paper, and then this paper may be delivered from the same particular paper maker. And then even if it's not coming from the same publishing company, both of the book used to be a paper, and then paper used to be a piece of tree, and this piece of tree used to be something on the ground receiving the water and then receiving the sunshine, right? And then definitely if you go there, sunshine is actually connecting point of merging those of them together. So in another word, if you go back there, if you have the type of Dharma eyes to be able to see such a large scale, I was mentioning Avatamsaka Sutra depicts such a large scale of interrelationship to depict this interrelated origination. It's that way. So therefore, if you really see it in a larger scale, both of them are 100% supported by sun. So in that way, at that point, it's completely merged and interpenetrated through the sun, by the sun. So if you really start to think about that, for instance, in the last year or so, I was really blessed by the opportunities to travel around some places like Germany, Italy, Belgium, and France, and in Japan. And then when you go there, you really start to see, wow, it's very interesting, even though each places you go is currently very multiracial. But at the same time, when you go to Italy, there's some common thread how Italian people, no matter what the ethnic background is, how they talk, how they behave, how they move, there's some kind of cultural, common thread. So therefore, they are merged into common thread of the culture that was established over, well, in Italian case, how many centuries? Like thousands of years. Same thing with France. When you go to France, there's some sort of common thread of how people talk, how people behave, how people move. And then it's not, even in the United States, people say this is such a divided nation. But at the same time, when you go out on the street and they are obviously looking Republican looking people, obviously looking Democratic looking people, but then how they speak, how they express themselves, or how they oppose to the other opinions, there's a common thread. There's some kind of cultural common thread, and then in that they are really merging, even though in expression, they seems to be completely divided. If you really go into the reason why they think that way, behave that way, it's actually rooted into, common ground. So it's very interesting to me. And also, recently, Japan is preparing, to be precise, the city of Osaka is preparing for International Expo. I don't know if any of you have ever had experienced International Exposition Expo. When I was a young boy, I think it was 1970, my father was still quite active and healthy and up and about, and he always loved new things. And he always taught me it is very important to pay attention to something coming up as a new thing. Because the whole world keeps on changing. It is always interesting to see the change. I think I got that the trace of a characteristic from my father. I'm always interested in what the young generation is doing and what young generation is creating, what's the new product is coming, etc., etc. So on that day, for the birthday, I think it was birthday, he took me to International Expo that was held in Osaka in that year, 1970. And then he said, why don't we go there by air? And then why don't we come back home by bullet train? So this was my first time ever to fly by aircraft and also ride Shinkansen, bullet train back to home. So it was such a wonderful experience. And when I get to Expo, I got to see all these people from all over the world. Each country has their own pavilion and they are presenting their culture and their characteristically, made products like food and etc. etc. They always look different color, different shape, different height, etc. etc. But what was really interesting to me is everyone is basically presenting how important the weather is. All of those different products comes from the soil, sun, and water. Everyone shares this form of life that really requires the sun, requires food, requires water. So in another word, we are actually sharing and merging as a Earth planet community and sharing the same, so to speak, fate and destiny. If any of those things get screwed up, we are all screwed up. So in another word, if you really start to open up your view much broader, as if Five Eyes teaching always said, take a look at this from a far distance, or turning the table around, take a look at and examine this way and that way. And then their depiction is, of course, human eye, heavenly eye, Dharma eye, etc., etc., Prajna eye. But you really start to see, yes, as a matter of fact, on the surface, we thought they are obstacling each other. But in the end, in the true reality, we are all merged. We are all interrelated. In other words, if one screws up, everyone gets screwed up. Everyone at least gets the wave of the screw up. Eventually, there was an impact. And when someone does something good, also it's the same thing. It's a rippling effect. So that's the type of the depiction they are talking about in this Jiji Muge Hokkai. I think coming up with this 2,000 years ago is just so amazing. Now, out of this, if so, Jijimuge, Rijimuge, you can also tell, in a tiny little piece, you can actually see, or at least have a crack of viewing of entirety. And in another word, entirety can be learned from tiny little thing. So this is the famous, expression you have heard many, many, many times, but actually it comes from Avatamsaka Sutra. In other words, it's macro is macro, and one is all. All is one, one is all. It's probably the type of the expression you have heard about. I'm going to give you a little bit of an actual example from the writings. So I'm going to open this up. I hope by this time, if you haven't ordered the textbook, you probably already did. And then, or you may be someone who's really studious and you already had the book. And if you do have the book, or by the time you listen to this audio, you may have the book. The first example is, this book is 3 volumes, but volume 1, page 178. Page 178. At the top of the, page, it says, within a single atom, there are many oceans of, this says, Kshetra is, I don't know why this translation decided to use Sanskrit word as it is, even though this is translated into English from Chinese translation. But I assume instead of, it is Butsudo. Instead of translating Butsudo into Buddha land, when you say Buddha land, many English audience may have kind of different, visual images. So they probably decided to not to do that. So went back to original Sanskrit word. But this is basically ocean of Buddha land. Ocean of Buddha land is Hokkai. Hokkai, the word we've been using. Butsudo or Hokkai is the original word. Hokkai should be the probably good word. Kshetra is meaning land, yes. But in this case, Buddha land. So therefore, this is Hokkai. So within a single atom, there are many oceans of Kshetras. I also have to talk about this ocean. As I mentioned, this immensity, to depict this immensity, endlessness, they often utilize the word kai. Kai is umi, umi is ocean. Instead of just say Hokkai, they say ocean of such and such as an exaggeration to keep talking about the immensity and the depth of this interrelated origination. But again, this is a difficulty of translation. If you translate it as it is, it's basically, how do you say, postnomen to emphasize the volume of the word you just used. But if you faithfully keep on translating as it's into ocean, you may really have this visual image of maybe they're actually talking about ocean. Well, it's probably okay because ocean always gives the sense of immeasurable depth and immeasurable width. But at the same time, for 21st century modern men, ocean is something we can actually grasp and view from high above by aircraft. So please just don't get that impression of that ocean. But it is really about their way of emphasizing this immensity, okay? Within a single atom, there are many oceans of Buddha land. Although their locations are different, they are all adorned. In this way, the measureless enters into whatever is singular. Measureless, immense thing enters into just one little thing. All is in one. Yet every separate entity, one, remains free any intermixing or overlapping. So in another word, one is as it is already included all the land. So therefore, it's not just in every atom, there are inconceivable many Buddhas. Adapting to being's mind, they appear everywhere before them. Of all oceans of Kshetras, there are none they do not entirely pervade. In all such skillful means as these, there are no difference. This atom is a translation from Jin in Chinese character. And Jin is a translation of original Sanskrit, even though we cannot find the original Sanskrit of this text. But we do know when we see Jin in Chinese text, they use this word Jin as a translation of Sanskrit Anu or Paramanu, which means the smallest thing you can ever imagine. So currently, smallest thing we can imagine is no longer atom, isn't it? But this word Anu or Paramanu became the word origin of English word atom. So isn't that interesting? The connection between Sanskrit and the English word actually it started from this word anu became atom. But anyway, this is one of the typical examples. The next one, let's see, is this correct? My note. Yeah, let's see, chapter 17. This is a volume number 1, page 414. Let's see. If you do have this book, and please take a look at your own book too. I have a very bad English pronunciation. It's bad English. It's Junglish. So sometimes some people keep asking me, say, what? What did you say? So it is always nice that you have this textbook. Let's see. Page 414. After the first paragraph into the verse, wishing to completely know the sublime worlds are just coarse worlds, that coarse worlds are just sublime worlds. Shiki sokuze kuku sokuze shiki. In another word, it is almost like samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara. That upward facing worlds are just inverted world. So outside is inside and inside is outside. That inverted worlds are just upward facing worlds. The small worlds are just large world. One is all. Large world is just small world. All is one. That vast worlds are just narrow worlds. The narrow worlds are just vast worlds. Just a single world is just an ineffable number of worlds. There is an ineffable number of the worlds are just a single world. That ineffable number of worlds enter into a single world. That a single world enters into an ineffable number of the worlds. That defiled worlds are just pure worlds, and that pure worlds are just defiled worlds. Next one says, wishing to know within, this is a very famous expression. And also, this expression hit the chord of a modern scientist, I think. So particularly, I don't know about in Europe, but in America, I hear this expression from a scientific related group of people who are interested in Buddhism. And this is the quotation actually comes from this chapter of Avatamsaka Sutra. A single hair, the different natures of all worlds, and know the single essential nature of the tip of a single hair in all worlds. So it is in this one single pore of the hair, you can actually see how the whole world is consisted of. In another word, one single cell of a human body, you can actually see the structure of the human body and also how human body went through in the last millions of years of evolution. So when modern scientists started to discover many of these lines from Avatamsaka Sutra, then the interest in Buddhism really started to arise. So this is probably one of the most well-known portion you probably have heard about. This expression, this type of expression, of course, so wise, but at the same time, yes, it is really incredible that 2,000 years ago, Indian people in the high culture, even notices this. But in a beyond, place and time, in many different cultures and many different areas of planet, some people do recognize these things. When I was spending lots of time in San Francisco and related to San Francisco Zen Center, in some classrooms, they actually recited this poem by William Blake to kind of show the in-syncness of the teaching. So you might have heard about this, but I wrote it down here. So let me just open this up a little larger. This is a beautiful poem, I think. To see a world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. So this is really in sync with the description of Avatamsaka Sutra, because of course this one is all is one. You can actually expand it into time. And in the time case, this tiny little moment, microsecond, includes entire kalpas. And the entire kalpas manifests into one single microcosm. Just to clarify, of course, fundamentally, Blake comes from a Christian tradition. So therefore, what he's really talking about here is he has this concept of poetic genius. By poetic genius, I think he's really talking about as a synonym of true man. True man's T and M is capital. So in other words, there's some kind of noumenon, but it is a god. So, and then in this case, this noumenon, the god, is what we call Joitsu Shusai, permanent and only one. And this owns us and owns everything and operates us. So that's the manifestation. And then you can see this manifestation of this all-pervading sense of God. So therefore, it's a little different from how we view the thing. As I mentioned from the beginning, Buddhism does not set up the creators. If there's any creators or sense of creators, this whole total function is the creator, shall we say. So there's not like something separated from us, because we are actually inside of this total function. And also we are also giving some sort of impact into the keep on changing, this ever-changing total function anyway. But I think the kind of moment of epiphany is very similar. So I thought this was very interesting that it's been really cherished by a Buddhist group in San Francisco. Anyway, let me go on. So we were talking about this one is all is in one in a special portion. Now that is also can expand it into time. So beginning is ending. It sounds kind of similar. So the moment you started is the moment of completion. Does it sound similar? Familiar? It's a Dogen's practice and verification is one. Shusho Ichinyo. It's the same concept. It's so interesting to me. So for instance, therefore, chapter 17, this is volume 1, 415. If you do have this book again, please open it. Let me open this up so you can see it clearer and larger. I pulled out a couple of examples for this 415. This is a kind of complicated expression, but I'll read it anyway. To know meaning the complete enlightenment is to know the equality of long kalpas with short kalpas, and to know the equality of short kalpas with long kalpas. It is to know the quality of a single kalpa with innumerable kalpas, and to know the equality of innumerable kalpa with a single kalpa. What they are talking about, long is short and short is long. It's the same thing they are talking about. And it is to know the equality of kalpas in which there are Buddhas with kalpas in which there are no Buddhas, and to know the equality of kalpas in which there are no Buddhas with kalpas in which there are Buddhas. To know that in a kalpa in which there is not one Buddha, there are an ineffably large number of Buddhas, and to know that in a kalpa in which there are an ineffable number of Buddhas, there is one Buddha. To know the equality of measurable kalpas with immeasurable kalpas, to know the equality of immeasurable kalpas with measurable kalpas, to know the equality of an inexhaustible number of kalpas with an inexhaustible number of kalpas, to know the equality of an... go on and on and on. So please read it by yourself. It's a little difficult expression. So therefore, I'm going to pick up another one from page 410. It's a side-by-side chapter, but this one you probably recognize if you are Dogen study students. Towards the end of the page 410, we are talking about volume 1 of this book, page 410. When they make their initial resolve, this is Hatsu Bodaishin. So this is Shoshin. So in another word, it's the Shoshin is usually translated the beginner's mind, but it's the moment you created bodhicitta. Okay, when they make the initial resolve, they will then immediately attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So this is the famous line. In another word, the first time you raise the bodhicitta is the time you already completed enlightenment. In Japanese, 初めて発心するとき、すなわち小学を生ず。Sounds very familiar. Yes. I'm going to read this again. When they make their initial resolve, they will then immediately attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. They will realize that all dharmas are identical to very nature of the mind. They will perfect the wisdom body, and their own awakening will not arise in dependence on the others. The last portion is also something we can talk about for 2 hours, but just do that some other time. So this is very interesting to me. Well, let's see. First of all, we didn't really talk much about chronological line of ancient Buddhism into Mahayana Buddhism. But in Mahayana Buddhism, around the time of BC 1st century to 1st century, before that, Buddhism kind of gets stagnated by changing the form of practice into ordained priests who are supported by wealthy people. So there's some kind of isolation from a Buddhist community from a regular group of people. Despite the fact that this Buddhism is really for the people, then eventually what those ordained people started to do under these circumstances, their lives are all supported, and you don't have any much of worries about your own life. So therefore, they usually meditate and then think and then debate. And then they started to create this very intricate, kind of fixated process, way of describing what Gautama Buddha originally taught. And then created these theories, and this is called Abhidharma. So we normally call this as the age of Abhidharma. It's, in another word, it's a time of stagnation of Buddhist teachings. And then as a counter-response, almost within and without of the Buddhist priest communities, collaboratively started to arise the voice of, let's bring this back to what Gautama Buddha really meant to teach. And then, so therefore, this was some sort of common thread of all these group of people. I don't think it was really how do you say, collaboration of the people, but community by community here and there, as a natural course of the progression or evolution of Buddhism, they started to have this almost like deformation, so to speak. Force was starting to arise, and that's called Mahayana Buddhism, and then later on we call it that way. But this is the time, therefore, you see the type of the text who sounds as if they are challenging Abhidharma way of looking at, And then, so therefore, for us from 21st century aspect, we actually see it very interesting, because one portion is a stagnated Buddhism, but at the same time, it's almost like what I do for myself as a practice. And on the other hand, what the criticism portion from a Mahayana group of people, the type of the attitude I have in my life, particularly in relationship with others. So in another word, both are actually true in a way. But I think in this time, they were too inclined towards this stagnated portion, and then didn't really make much sense. So therefore, they were really starting to open this teaching up, and then showing this contrast. So in another word, for instance, this Avatamsaka Sutra, what's really noticeable is that in ancient Buddhism, what we understood from the depiction of Abhidharma is that once we raise bodhicitta, so in other words, something happens in our life and we have some kind of epiphany or some kind of a strongly impact-making experience, and then you start to feel, I must do something about that. And then you come to a Buddhist temple, a Buddhist teaching, and you start to raise bodhicitta, mind of awakening, and then you go through all these sometimes very difficult practice, session after session, interview after interview, etc., etc. And then there's a huge, like many processes of, go up and go through of practice. And finally, someday, after long years, after long sets of difficult practice, you awaken. That was the depiction we took in before Mahayana Buddhism. But then in the development of understanding Buddha's teaching, in Mahayana Buddhism, text really sees space and time differently. So therefore, it's a completely different depiction. The moment of bodhicitta is the moment of clear understanding. But from our aspect, it really makes sense. This is really like a Dogen's depiction. The moment you wake up, while you are sitting in the morning zazen, you get sleepy. And sometimes you are into these fantastical ideas and thoughts. And then you start to feel, oops. The moment you wake up, you are just sitting with everything in this Dharma world. So in another word, that's the moment of just you face back into the white wall in front of you, but face back right into just as it is, the reality. So this moment is not just a moment to last, but moment after moment after moment after moment after that type of experience and that type of practice. And that's how we view time and space, which is constantly changing. It's not repeating. So therefore, if you say, well, I actually had a bodhicitta 10 years ago, that doesn't exist anymore. And then you say, well, if I go through this, I will do a major awakening in 5 years. That's just an expectation. That's a dream. That's a fantasy. And that's actually how not this Dharma world, what it isness, is working. So this is really showing the development of understanding of Gautama Buddha's teaching And at the same time, in reality, as a human being, what we are doing is moment by moment by moment of sometimes very difficult practice. And then, as a human being, we do actually remember things in the past, though it is just a shadow in our brain. But at the same time, in that way, we can have some sort of a kind of perspective about, well, 10 years ago I was this way. Right now I'm this way. Well, something may be happening. That kind of thing actually is encouraging. So in another word, there's one true reality, and then we really can rely on that. But at the same time, we have to do something every moment. We can't really just say, wow, everything is just what it is. So just leave it that way. You can't do that because that is already a contribution of the karma, action, function into. It doesn't bring you to the next moment or something. So this is a very interesting process, and this is also very interesting that Avatamsaka Sutra often gives you this sense of ladder climbing by utilizing this number 10. Did I mention that one of the typical expression in Avatamsaka Sutra is trying to utilize this number 10. So therefore, in some cases you see, okay, you do this and you do this and you do this, and when you complete 10, but I don't think they are utilizing those number 10 in that manner. And then while you see all of those number 10 kind of expression, you do see the expression like, yeah, the moment of the first bodhicitta is the moment of perfect enlightenment. So this really shows a transitional time of evolution of Buddhist teaching and Buddhist understanding. And also, this is also the transitional time of self-development type of practice into more about the universal self type of practice. So in another word, you see the type of the practice, I do this, and I'm going to sit zazen, and then I'm going to get enlightened. In one way, the aspiration is important, but at the same time, this is also give too much attention to this I, which actually doesn't exist, according to what the Buddha is teaching. So if I do this I thing too much about this self-development type of practice, you are actually getting away and further away from the original portion of where Gautama Buddha's teaching starts. So it goes into completely non-Buddhist way of practice. But instead, I think in Abhidharma time, there was a tendency to become like a self-development type of practice. It is like, each one of the Buddhist priests has to get rid of desire, etc. Instead, Mahayana Buddhism, by understanding deeper about what the Gautama Buddha's teaching is about, they really start to understand this I is completely merged with muge, non-obstacle, with everything else. So therefore, what I do is for the others, and what I do for the others is actually doing good for me too. So it's an interpenetration. So in another word, it is from one out of all me, this is Uchiyama Roshi's expression, practice, to one out of all me, trying to constantly function as all out of all me. That type of development is quite clear. So in another word, from the world of dichotomy into reconciliation of dichotomy is almost like a key factor of this time of Mahayana Buddhism arising. And also from Goga to Jiga, self-centered me, to Jiga, Goga, to Jiko, universal self. So this is also a very clear characteristic you can keep on reading from Avatamsaka Sutra. It's also, Sawaki Roshi always often said the first step into Buddhist teaching is to throw out gaman. Gaman is the Buddhist terminology of static sense of self. Or static sense of self, of course, includes this arrogance, pride that this static sense of self have. The first step, you have to listen to this, first step, not like 5 or 6 steps away. Otherwise, you cannot say you entered the Buddha way. So, Dogen says the same thing repeatedly. I think Sawaki Roshi was really following Dogen's word. Particularly in Zuimonki, he always talks about the first step. First thing you have to do is let go of your personal opinion, personal belief system you're hanging on to. And then you just really have to let go of it. And then you actually stepped into Buddhist teaching or Buddha's way. This is all in sync with what we were talking about as a characteristic of, teachings of Avatamsaka Sutra, Kengon-kyo. I have 10 more minutes to complete this. I don't think I can complete this, so I'm going to stretch into the next lecture. But I like to read a little bit from Vimalakirti Sutra. With this New York group, we did have a series of lectures on Vimalakirti Sutra as well. We didn't read the whole thing, but because of the time restriction, we read just a little bit. But I highly recommend this version of a translation by Robert Thurman. It is translated as a holy teaching of Vimalakirti Sutra, Mahayana scripture. Vimalakirti Sutra shows this, dichotomical teaching, stagnated teaching in Abhidharma era, a newly arising reformation movement, shall we say, of Mahayana Buddhism to bring this back into the original meaning of what Gautama Buddha said. Then understanding what Gautama Buddha taught in a deepening way of understanding Buddhadharma. There are lots of interesting conversation shows up here. So if you do have this book, there are so many examples, but I'm just going to read a little bit. It's section 3, Disciples' Reluctance to Visit Vimalakirti, and this is page 24. Many of you do know what the Vimalakirti Sutra does, but there's a lay practitioner whose name is Vimalakirti. And Vimalakirti is so wise and so well developed in the teachings. And so one day we have heard that Vimalakirti is sick. So Gautama Buddha actually want to send his students to go visit Vimalakirti. But he starts to ask his top 10 students who's surrounding Gautama Buddha. And then each one of them says, oh, no, I'm kind of reluctant to do that because once I was such and such a place and I ran into Vimalakirti and the Vimalakirti said this and I was so completely embarrassed. So this is a really interesting portion. It's almost like comics. So the first guy who shows up is Shariputra, of course. Shariputra is supposed to be the one who's the most wise, right? So thus I have been addressed. Let's see. So, Lord, I am indeed reluctant. Lord is Buddha. And Shariputra is responding to Buddha who asked Shariputra to go visit Vimalakirti. I am indeed reluctant to go to ask Vimalakirti, Lichavi Vimalakirti. Lichavi is the name of the clan, about his illness. Lichavi also meaning Vimalakirti was depicted as a very wealthy trader, merchant. This is also very interesting historically. But anyway, why? I remember one day when I was sitting at the foot of a tree in the forest, absorbed in contemplation. Lichavi Vimalakirti came to the foot of the tree and said to me, in another word, in Abhidharma time, they thought Buddhist meditation is absorbing into this meditation. You yourself is absorbed into deep samadhi. And then there, Vimalakirti says, Reverend Shariputra, this is not the way to absorb yourself in contemplation. So this is not the real way of samadhi, of meditation. You should absorb yourself in contemplation so that neither body nor mind appear anywhere in the triple world. In another word, if you are sitting meditation and trying into getting into samadhi for yourself, that means your sense of body and mind, meaning I. So I am achieving samadhi. Yes, you shouldn't be doing that. He's saying you should absorb yourself in contemplation in such a way that you can manifest all ordinary behavior without forsaking cessation. You should absorb yourself in contemplation in such a way that you can manifest the nature of an ordinary person without abandoning your cultivated spiritual nature. You should absorb yourself in contemplation so that the mind neither settles within nor moves without toward external forms. So in another word, he's saying, it is not about becoming mushin, like Rinzai folks always says, getting rid of complete ideas and thoughts and complete voidness is the goal. But here already saying that is not the goal, neither chasing after something, like chasing after the answer to give to your teacher for koan study. So it's neither mushin, neither chasing after. You should absorb yourself in contemplation in such a way that 37 aids of enlightenment are manifest without deviation toward any conviction. You should absorb yourself in contemplation in such a way that you are released in liberation without abandoning the passions that are province of the world. So instead of trying to get rid of, completely away from delusion, you do samadhi practice without getting rid of delusion. This is quite in sync with the Menzan Zenji's expression about it is not about getting rid of three poisons. It is about transforming the three poisons into wholesome way. It is not about getting rid of complete secular life, mundane life, and going to the deep in mountain, isolated yourself. Instead, you keep doing this among the people in this world. So this is a completely new message at that time to this stagnated Abhidharma era of Buddhism. But now, interesting portion is this transformation of, or reformation, shall we say, Buddhist teachings is still ongoing, I think. We do have remnants of old way of understanding, discounting the evolved portion of understanding Buddha's teaching. So this is quite valid still now, I think. I also like to talk about a little more about the Dogen's expression, which is completely in sync with this portion of Kengonkyo's expression. But time is up, so we are going to have a little break, and then in the next lecture, I'm going to continue. Well, thank you very much. See you in a bit.